When we were younger, my grandpa taught us how to plant gardens, and the most important thing that we learned was how to plant tomatoes, and we've loved them ever since. And they're easy to plant here where we live. They love the heat. They are prolific growing here. We've always had great luck with them as long as you keep them tended to and make sure that they have water and some shade in the hottest part of the summer. So I want to talk to you a little bit about tomatoes and all the different things about them that you need to know. There's lots of beautiful ones that come out, and of course they taste absolutely delicious, but there's also a lot of pests and things that like these delicious tomatoes just as much as we do. So I want to talk a little bit about those too. First, I wanted to show you some pretty good examples of pretty near perfect tomatoes that came out of our garden. They are different than what you would buy in the store in that they're not absolutely perfect, but they taste really delicious because they're vine ripened in the garden. And there's a couple different varieties here. We mostly grow like Better Boys and Early Girls because they have a shorter time for growth, and we live in a very hot place in Zone 9B, and you have to have varieties that will grow quickly and fruit quickly. To start with, we have a lot of tomatoes that get eaten by birds. If you have a garden, it attracts birds because of the fruit, because of the sunflowers, all the different things, the bugs. So that's the problem that we really have with our tomatoes, is that the birds get to them. Here's another beautiful tomato that the birds just took a giant hole out of it. If it is just birds, then you can cut off that part and you can use the rest of the tomato. Here's another one gotten by the birds. The only thing that you can really do to protect from birds would be able to put a net over your tomatoes to keep them out of making holes in your tomatoes. I would say that birds getting our tomatoes is probably one of our biggest problems that we have with tomatoes in our garden. Here's another example of a problem that we have here in our garden in Zone 9B. We get splits in our tomatoes, and that is just because of inconsistent watering. We do have our tomatoes on a drip system, but it's still not perfect, and the soil needs to be kept consistently moist, so sometimes we get cracks. We also have big fluctuating temperatures here where we live. Sometimes it's really hot, and then we'll have a few cooler days, especially in the spring. We usually plant our tomatoes like in March, and so by June they're sometimes starting to split from the hot temperatures that we get, sometimes over 100. So that's something else that you might watch for with your tomatoes, is splits, but that's something that can be cut off and you can still use the tomatoes, but it takes away from some of the perfectness of the tomatoes that you could use otherwise, but there's no harm in using the rest of the tomato. Sometimes you might find holes in your tomatoes like these. They can be a fruit worm here where we live that bores holes deep down inside your tomatoes like this. Sometimes it can make them rotten on the inside, and you will just want to throw them away or feed them to your animals. They can also be other types of things that bore holes in there, other types of bugs. I would research where you live. Sometimes people have trouble with slugs or things like that getting into their tomatoes. So I would research your zone where you live and your state where you live, what type of pests are prevalent and which get into the tomatoes. I have an example here of blossom rot and a tomato. And basically what this means is it's not getting consistent watering, as far as the soil is not consistently kept moist. It also means that there was not enough calcium in the soil, and there's nothing really you can do about it except pull the tomato out. You can still eat the tomato, you just have to cut off the bad part on the bottom of it. What you'll want to do in the future though is you'll want to make sure you have more calcium also in the soil. You can get that with eggshells crushed up, you can get that with gypsum, or you can get that with things like lime or calcium nitrate in your soil next time that you plant your tomatoes. I wanted to show you some of our tomatoes, and our tomatoes are thicker here where we live because it's so hot. And so a lot of people trim them way back, but here where it's so hot, we like to leave some of the leaves and some of the little branches, because that way we get plenty of tomatoes, but it kind of shades the tomatoes in the hottest part of the summer for us. And sometimes we do have to put up a shade cloth later in the summer, but for a while the other plants help to shade the tomatoes so they don't get scorched by the sun, because we get temperatures like in the hundreds really quickly here where we live. And so I'm just going to show you how close they are, but they're doing really good right now. Here you see we have it quite thick in here with our tomatoes. We also have a few sunflowers growing in here, but the tomatoes are just doing fine. They're shaded by the other leaves and the plants. They're doing really good. We always every year get plenty of tomatoes, tons and tons of them. We have a bunch of different varieties right now. We have a few heirloom varieties. We also have some hybrid varieties that grow well here. We have Celebrity and Early Girl. We have Champion, Beefsteak. We have beefsteak tomatoes. We also have this Amish sauce tomato that we planted for the first time this year from seed. I hope that you'll enjoy your tomatoes this summer, and that even if you have some pests, that you'll not give up on tomatoes, because they're absolutely delicious and they taste so good, so much better than anything you can buy in the store. Find out what pests you have in your area so that you can treat them. You can treat them naturally, or you can use other things that you're comfortable using with your plants, but be careful, because these are things that we eat and we put in our bodies, so you want to be careful what kind of things that you add to the soil or that you use to keep the plants healthy. One thing to always remember is that healthy plants are less likely to get pests, so try to keep your plants as healthy as possible by keeping them watered. Pull off any leaves that look curly. They might be due to lack of water. It might be due to white flies or other insects on them. So make sure that you keep your plants as healthy as possible, and then you'll have the most productive tomatoes or plants in your garden.